This episode is brought to you by Trailer Park Yard Games, where over 28 games are delivered directly to your party. We park the trailer, you party.
Nobody really noticed, but I noticed that they didn't notice.
Right. Or they were probably wondering, whose wife is this?
Who is it? Yeah, what? Or is she just going to be kind of handing out things?
Right.
Yeah.
What snacks did she bring?
Did you go get me a drink, Toots?
So I thought, okay, how can I walk into a room with more presence?
Let's have a chat, talk this and that with PB and Jaisy.
Well, welcome to the PB and Jaisy podcast, the podcast about anything and everything. I'm Bill Stedham, the lucky bee sandwiched between three beautiful women, and to my right.
Hi, I am Jaisy, the JC to the PB and Jaisy sandwich.
And to my left.
I am Sarah Paget, P for Paget. That's PB and JZ.
And what can I say about our next guest? An accomplished author, has been author of 3 books, Corporate Kitty Litter, Body, Language, and Soulful Thoughts, and her latest, co-authored with Stephen Covey and Ken Blanchard, Blueprint for Success. She's also written several short stories in the Chicken Soup for Soul series, owns Petey Parker and Associates, is a nationally recognized speaker. I honestly have over 14 pages of notes, but they've only given me 30 seconds for this introduction. One of the most giving people I know, and I mean that seriously. And I believe Amazon's #1 customer in the United States.
I got competition.
I don't know.
But most of all, I can genuinely say, Petey Parker is my friend and someone I know that my wife Ann and I can call at any time. Petey, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, I can't. That's enough.
That's all we need. That's it.
all I've got.
Let's go home, wrap it up. We're done.
I've got.
Well, we're so glad that you're here, and we've got lots of things we want to ask you about. And I want to just kick it right off with, I've heard you're a bit of a daredevil.
Oh.
And I've seen you jump off of bridges.
Oh, adrenaline junkie.
Yes.
Rappel down sides of buildings.
Yes.
Tell us more about this and some of the favorite things you like to do.
Okay, well, it started as a professional speaker. I looked at an audience, about 1,000 people, and said, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, financially, physically, psychologically, within every 2 years. And then I stopped and thought, you're not doing that yourself.
And then you married Jim.
And then I married Jim. And that was my
Out of your comfort
adrenaline.
zone.
Right there. So I have had to challenge myself every 2 years to do those things myself. And one of them is physically overcoming fear. And my first was jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. What does that look like? And my husband went with me, who's afraid of heights of any kind. So that was my first experience. And I thought, well, after doing that, I can do anything. So I foolishly thought that. And I've been up in Russian MiGs, dogfighting, repelling a building with a name like Petey Parker.
Yeah. Living up to the Spider-Man Peter Parker name.
Gosh,
doing him justice.
It was terrible because for years people would walk up to me and say, how does it feel to repel big buildings? And I would think, I
Like I really
don't
have.
know. But when I got up there was 40 miles an hour wind.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm all over the building. Everybody else looks like Top Gun coming down, but I'm all over the building, and the announcer down there said, "It really is Petey Parker." So my daredevil days. I'm still looking for the next thing. I'd like to run with the bulls.
Oh, that would be cool.
I've got a husband that said no because he doesn't want to take care of me.
Has he really said no?
He really said more than no. He said, "I don't want to take care of you if you're mean."
Wow.
If you get hurt, that's it.
Yeah,
Well, y'all have good life insurance, right?
Yeah.
Not enough.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
There's
Do that
never
first.
enough.
Maybe judge fight insurance.
Maybe just don't do it. So
Yeah.
the last thing was bobsledding at the Olympics place in Park City. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
And so, sorry, what else is on your list?
Well, I'm looking for that next thing.
Okay.
So if there's anybody listening to this podcast, if they've got a devil
Recommendations on how you can
what
risk
else
your life?
can you do after this? The jumping off the bridge was in Vic Falls in Africa.
It was like a bungee or?
It was bungee, but there were like teenage kids that were between Zambia and anyway, they were on this part of the bridge that is not belonging to anybody. And I knew something was wrong when they wrapped my ankles with towels, like bath towels, and said, "This is the longest rappel in the world, and you're going to feel like you're slipping out of this because you're upside down." And truly, you do. And mine went whirling out into way out, and he said, "It's never happened before like that." But the rappel came up. But the hardest thing is I used to do everything in high heels. So everything was in heels. So I'm in high-heeled boots trying to climb up the bridge afterwards, which was harder than the rappel and the jump. Next month, somebody's rope broke.
Oh, no.
And she lived to tell the story with a lot of broken everything.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And I thought her story is better than mine.
Darn.
I know.
Do you still do everything in high heels? Because for me, that's like risking my life enough.
That's pretty daredevilish.
Yeah, I do. And even when we were repelled, we did something for Special Olympics off the bank building. And the vice squad was holding me, and I realized my heel was caught in the top of the rounded part. And he said, "Just let go and fall back." And I said, "I don't think so."
These are good heels.
Yeah.
He said, "No, you need to lean back." And I said, "Really don't think so?"
Not my Jimmy
And he
shoes.
said, "Look, we've got you all right. You're going to be okay." And I said, "Not if I break the heel."
I wonder how many people have run with the bulls in heels.
In heels.
I don't know. I could be the first.
So I have a question. When you do something like that, what do you feel like you're gaining at that point? Like, what do you, when you leave those experiences, what do you take with you?
The reason I did it is what I feel. And in my life, I've had to overcome so many things. And I think the higher you set the bar for yourself and you accomplish that, the more you say, if I can do that, there's no stopping me. So I lose the fear that other people would have, but I gain that sort of look of you are a crazy person for the people closest to me.
Right.
But my self-awareness, my self-confidence, and I do that financially. I do that, I'm studying now like quantum physics, because that's so far above whatever I thought I would be studying. But I think if I can grasp that, then what else will I understand? So it's all mixed up there.
You touched a little bit on things that you've had to overcome. Like, how did you start out? And we know you have this amazing business and all these different things that you've done, but how did you start out?
By mistake. I think so much of what I've
Stumbled
done,
upon it.
Yeah, so much of what I've done was, I'm very spiritual in my answer to that, because I have followed paths that I never thought I would even walk on. Mm-hmm. And so I started off lying about my age, true confessions, and became a flight attendant at just barely 19 in a world that I had no idea of what life was like. And there was a certain innocence to that got me through it. And there's a certain innocence all along in my life where I was raised by a single mother and a grandmother. And so all of my life, I've carried their words with me. And my grandmother used to say, number one, never sit in judgment, because you don't know their backstory. And you don't even know your own story. So I've carried that through being the only woman in certain businesses, where I had to learn to still be feminine and be a woman and still enter a man's world, knowing that I had to have more respect and more regard to hold those positions. So I've done everything that you can. I don't know how far you want me to go in this past. When you've lived this long, you've got a lot of stories.
Well, let's cover it. One of the things that I know is you've been very good at helping people improve, whether that's in your past real estate world of helping managers and agents have tremendous success, leading a real estate company, not only the largest independent company in Dallas-Fort Worth, and probably the United States, if I recall correctly, but leading an independent company of realtors to having your own company and helping companies like Walmart, just tons, and Century 21 International, just tons of places. What are some strategies that you use to help people improve what they're doing? I mean, how do you get very egotistical people who think they know the answer to everything, and when you walk in, they just look at you like, yeah, right.
He's trying to get you to tell him how to coach me.
Yeah. Coach me.
Or coach myself. I don't know. Back when I said, my grandmother said, do not sit in judgment. And part of those words of wisdom were to sincerely care about other people. And I think if I had one word that I have always carried with me, is to show grace. And that grace alone means that people feel that. People feel that when you say something, somebody's giving, I don't think of it as giving, I think of it as sharing. And that sharing is, if I'm any part of your life, we never know what part we play in somebody else's life. We don't know if it's our story or their story. And so whether dealing with, in real estate, there's a lot of high egos.
I've never encountered any.
Well,
You don't say.
We could barely shut
this
the
is a
door
new
today.
thing. Do we want to start this all over again? We'll just talk about that part. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. People are people. Humans are humans. And once you find out what motivates that person or those people or that group of people, once you figure out that motivation, and if it's good and it's positive and it's right to be part of that. And so it was not a technique as much as what can I do in kindness to help that person be the best they can be. And even in my consulting side, I never intended to be a consultant because I thought, I don't have any background in being a consultant. And I found out all they wanted from me was the truth.
Oh, wow.
But the truth given with kindness.
Right.
And the truth given with, if I've got my fingerprints on part of your success because you were able to achieve what you wanted to achieve, it does not get better than that for me.
Right.
So it was an ego bender for me too, to have that opportunity. Did that answer your question?
I really think it did. And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one thing that I know about you and what I probably respect and envy and admire the most is your ability to talk to anyone. And I watched you recently. We were at a get together and there was a couple sitting by themselves. You did not know them. And I watched you walk past the people you know, said a quick hi, and you sat down. Tell me about that process, because I struggle, I don't want to sit down and be like, how's the weather? Or, hey guys, watch any good movies?
What's your line? Or what's your line?
How do you start this kind of conversation?
How do you pick up friends?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I don't know that there's a technique or anything that I use because I am drawn to people. This sounds very metaphysical, but again, I was raised by a grandmother who was very metaphysical, and she said you will always feel a certain attraction to people without even knowing why. And Bill, I have to tell you, we have more neurons in our brains that you'd call, it's a gut feeling, but really it's in the brain. It's a thing. And I sometimes feel very drawn to people, and if there's an opportunity, because they were sitting by themselves, to have the honor to sit next to them and just hear their story. I love people, their stories.
That's awesome.
Well, it's awesome, but at the same time, sometimes we don't want to share our own stories, and then we talk to somebody else and we go, wow, I should need to be so grateful.
Yeah.
Because after hearing their story and what they've done and how they've done it, you really need to up your game yourself.
Well, I think none of that is coincidence. It's all, I think God has us all cross paths for a reason. Yeah. So I love that you said you had the opportunity and the blessing of meeting someone, an honor. Yeah.
It's great. It's kind of like what people say now with the vibes. You just feel someone's vibes.
Yeah. Their aura.
It's the vibes, man. It's good vibes only.
Yeah.
And so I totally resonate with that. With sometimes, you can be in a room full of people and for some reason it's like, man, I kind of feel like a tug that I should talk to this person. And then after, God places you in someone's path for a reason, and then you kind of have like a shared experience or something where you can kind of draw from that. And none of that is, just like you said, none of that is coincidence. All of that is God's putting you in. I always
feel like I'm trying to avoid people.
No.
Like I do. Like I just, and
I think you're downplaying it. I've seen you talk to people.
Well, I can pretend, and I'm not necessarily pretending like to be sincere or anything. I get energy from being alone and learning and kind of being where, like, my husband Michael is more extrovert. He gets energy from being around people, and it drains me. Like, I will do it and I will give, but then I like want to go hide in a corner and like rock for a little bit.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm more like I think we've talked, or Michael and I are the same, like Enneagram? What, that thing. Enneagram. Enneagram, whatever, whichever one. But yeah, I love being in social situations where I'm meeting people and are, you know, I'm a Leo too. So it's like, hey guys, I'm here, you know, and I love that. It charges me up.
Like, you're making me nervous right now just talking about it.
Yeah.
Or like, someone's like, do you want to
We should hug, Sarah.
Like, do you want to go network? I'm like, no.
Well, I had years of crashing parties and crashing.
Really?
Oh, talk about that.
Oh,
I love that.
That's our tale.
Weddings,
I think.
parties, what?
Oh, everything.
Well, let's just move this up. Hold on 1 second.
All right.
Tales from Lava.
Okay. Well, this is the opportunity. I had to overcome the fear.
For sure, yeah.
And so I learned to walk into rooms pretending that I knew everybody in the room and everybody knew me, even though I didn't know anybody, and I was scared to death. Because remember, my world was an all-male. I was in the dental profession, and the only female that really was running a company. So it was like every time I walked in the room, nobody really noticed, but I noticed that they didn't notice.
Right.
Or they were probably wondering, whose wife is this?
Who is it? Yeah. What? Or is she just going to be kind of handing out things?
Right.
Yeah.
What snacks did she bring?
Did you go get me a drink, Toots?
So I thought, okay, how can I walk into a room with more presence? How can I not consider this a room of strangers, but how do I consider this a room of people I'd like to get to know? And so I started, just any time there was any event or anything going on, or even a lot of cars by the side of the road, I would go in the house. And I made a mistake, talk about real estate. So I see all these cars in a very influential part of town, Highland Park. And so I'm like right there in Turtle Creek, lots of cars, and they were all very impressive cars, except for mine. It was way back in the back. And so I walked up there and I thought, I can do this. This is what I do. And I walked in. I had a great time. I had never ordered a drink or food or anything because I think that's presumptuous. Me walking in is not. And the trick is to look ahead.
Don't take it too far.
Yeah. The trick is to look ahead like you've really seen that person and wave to them and like they're greeting you. And nobody ever stopped me. Years and years, nobody ever stopped me till I got in that house and I was far into it. And Henry S. Miller walked up to me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I thought, oh my goodness.
Who is Henry S. Miller, for those who don't know?
Henry S. Miller had a very large real estate firm, both commercial and residential, and was kind of the, and his wife Juanita recognized me. And I have learned also how to walk out backwards as they really coming in, but how to leave. So I became far more selective about, but I would go to weddings, or went to a funeral once, you know, which was, and cried with everybody.
What's the difference?
Oh my goodness.
What's the difference, Petey?
Well, not much. You know, a time lapse, maybe a time lapse. So,
I ended up in a funeral once. I was going
He
to
pissed
the
Ann off.
yeah.
No, I was going to the funeral of one of my agent's parents, and I didn't know this agent very well, and I knew her mom had passed away, and it was at Laurelland, and they had multiple chapels. I walked into the wrong one. I didn't know her name. I sat down. I noticed into the funeral that I was the only person that looked like me. And what I expected to go an hour was like 3 hours into it, and they're hugging me and they're getting me up, and I'm like, where am I at and what have I done?
We have to put a silver alert out for Bill.
Yeah.
Where am I at?
Lost.
Last seen driving a truck.
I want to change just a little bit here. So we move tails up just a little bit, but I want to know about giving back because, and I'll set the stage. many years ago. I'm going to say 2 decades ago, maybe even a little longer than that.
Before
You don't want to age
born.
yourself.
I know.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, I'll age myself.
Where are we going with this?
Well, no.
What is
Jim invited me and Ann and I to a non-party at Petey and Jim's house.
A non-party?
A non-party.
Okay,
That's
when
what
you
they
say
call it.
non-party, I'm thinking like non-bread, like
No,
there's
no.
chicken
No.
tikka and naan. Like,
It's actually called a non-party, and he sent it out, and he invited us, and so Anna and I decided to go. It was on Christmas Eve, and of course we don't have any family here in Texas, so we went over, and I walked into this house, so this is going to ask several questions here, and there were more Christmas trees than I've ever seen in my entire life.
You're in the forest.
But more importantly, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of teddy bears.
Oh.
And food and drink laid out, and people are coming from all walks of life that are coming in, some real estate, some otherwise, and they're coming in and we're enjoying time. And about 9:30, 10 o'clock, there was an announcement made that we're going to bag all the bears. So, Petey, I've set the stage. Tell us about the teddy bear ministry and where it's at today. And this is something you and Jim have created, and I think it's amazing.
It's amazing on different levels. Somebody once told me when they tried to do something nice to someone else, and the someone else said, no, I can do this. And the person wanting to give said, please do not take this blessing away from me. And I think my blessings came because, as I said, I had a single mother and a grandmother. We were very, very poor. And because of my circumstances, I was bullied a lot. And Christmas presents were non-existent, pretty much. So I have never forgotten, but learned from at age 5 and 6, that maybe I was not going to receive that much. And so what could I give? And I didn't, it was kind of like the drummer boy. I didn't really have that much but myself to give. So I learned that and so I have looked all of my life for where are the little missing pieces, what is it I have to give? And then for Jim and myself, it was an object lesson for the kids. And we had hoped that would take. And it did. But at the time, it doesn't. And so we said, okay, well, we're going to get some bears and we're going to go to the hospital. Jim was on the board. My husband was on the board. And so we knew we could get into the hospital with those few bears. But there are very few kids that are actually in a regular hospital. It's not children's. And so we have one bear left over. So we asked the nurse, where do we go? Who do you have? Is there anybody who's not received anything, And she said, yes, but that's a woman, but don't bother, because she's been in a coma for a couple weeks now. And so we said, well, bother. And so we prepared the kids for this is not going to go well. There's not going to be a response. There's not going to be, So Jim walked in as Santa Claus and had the final bear and put it down in just the crook of her arm. And he leaned down and said, Merry Christmas and may God bless. And she opened her eyes.
No way.
Oh
said,
my
may
gosh.
God bless you. And we were like,
Oh my gosh.
and the kids were going, but we thought there was something. And so the nurse is running down the hallway. And we will never know what happened with that. But we said, you know what, this is right. This is good. And from that, someone else on one of these bear trips said, well, we had bears left over, because then it had gone to hundreds before it went to thousands.
Right.
And so we ended up in a huge community room thinking it was just homeless and it was just going to be a little shelter.
Right.
And we had only one bag left. But by that time, there was a Mrs. Claus and elves and whatever.
The whole production had grown.
Yeah.
Oh, it definitely had.
And so what happened there is some of the elves followed us, and while we were outside cold, and women with threadbare blankets around kids who were feeding 1,500 people. And so we gave out as best we could, and then we ran out. But someone, I don't know, Bill, if it was you, but one of the elves came up and said, I'm so sorry, but there's bears in my car. We forgot to take them to the hospital. And the last bear went to the last woman with child.
That's
So you know you're on the right track. We've never solicited bears. We've never, ever. They have just come. And even last year with COVID, when we could not do it, we had bears. We had several hundreds of bears. So instead, we bought Santa hats for everybody, and the nurses and doctors delivered those bears.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So it goes on and beyond you sometimes. You've been a Santa Claus with us from that humble beginning of a non-party. Bill and Ann and several other people have become Santa Clauses, and the last count we had nearly 3,000. And they're not always bears. Kids in churches and whatever will create them. And the funniest and closeout for me is that we got in this big dinosaur in a pink tutu.
Aww. Jim kept that one for himself.
He wanted it.
I'm not giving this one.
I had to drag it from him, and I couldn't, let go of the dinosaur. But there's so many stories that the story is no longer about us. You've given me the grace to tell that story, but it is no longer about us. It's all the stories of the people that every once in a while we hear who has received one. They have no idea who we are.
Right.
We're not an organization. But it's gone, so the people that give us the bears is almost as intensive as the people receiving them.
Right.
And we're just the conduit.
I've been with Bill a couple times, and they're like, "Where are you from?" And just North Pole. Yeah, that's all we say.
Pole.
They probably get mad, but
Well, it reaches so many people, and
it's awesome.
And we see so many things. We're joined somewhere between 30 and 50 people from our Mansfield family go with us on Christmas morning to carry forth this tradition, and it's amazing because we look up and we have bears. We do a pie day and we mention it, but next thing you know, we have more bears than we know what to do with. And there's always just enough. Yeah. And it works out perfectly. And we've been, we had an agent of ours whose husband was in the hospital with cancer, and it was stage 4 end-of-life cancer. And her hope was that we would get to visit. She knew what we did. And I remember being able to walk up and deliver a bear with a bunch of our folks there. And the next day he passed away. But, the look on people's faces and the love that we're able to give back, it's amazing. And it all started from an object lesson that you and Jim were doing with the kids, I think 33 years ago.
Yeah, plus. Yeah.
Plus?
Yeah, we... the stories are not always happy. Sometimes they're very sad, like yours. That we will be the last people they ever see.
Yeah.
And so we have elf training. And we say, you know what? You walk into that room, you pray with them, you stay with them, we go with them. But when you walk out of that room, you get a handle on yourself and you walk in the next room with a smile on your face. And once again, what you get versus what you give.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, last year we did it 2000. Well, I guess COVID stopped us for a couple of years now. It seems like we Santa walked into a room, and there were all these Mansfield police officers there, and a poor guy chained to the bed. And I said, Santa wants to know if he can have a bear. Nope, get out of here. With that, we probably better level up. And Jaisy, why don't you take that away?
Yeah, so I actually have a perfectly fitting quote for what we were talking about. It's from Chuck Palahniuk, who's the writer of Fight Club and all these really great books. And his quote is, "The goal isn't to live forever, it's to create something that will." And I think that it's a beautiful quote, but it speaks so much to what you're doing with not only your company, but also with the Teddy Bear Ministry and all the different ways that you give back. And I feel like that's a common goal for all of us sitting here at this table, that when we pass, if anything, people will continue to be remembered with these legacies and things like that we leave. So thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you
Yes,
so
that
much
was
for all that
awesome.
you've been doing
Yes.
with the community.
You made me
and
want to go jump off something.
Yes.
In a good way.
jump off and throw a bear to someone.
On the way down.
Well, I got to tell you guys, like us wherever you can find our show. Share it with somebody else. Let us know what you think, whether it's good or bad. We want to hear. This has been a PB and Jaisy show. We out.
Bye.
Just had a chat, talk this and that with PB and Jaisy.